Yeah. Well, for starters, down payment assistance back then was $5,000 is a program that they have as a deferred forgivable loan if you met the income requirements
Right.
set by HUD. And that used to go quite a ways. Today that's not the case. I know housing is really skyrocketed
Yeah.
since then. And, the whole affordable housing issue, it's not something that just faces, us here at the City of Bryan in our community, but it's almost every city in Texas and almost, nationwide.
Howdy, you're watching the Think Brazos podcast. We host conversations with locals, politicians, and policy experts to help families thrive in Brazos County, Texas. So when you're thinking about how to make your community better, just remember, think local, think Brazos.
This is the Think Brazos podcast, and today we're joined by Kevin Boriskie, who is the Place 6 at-large council member for the City of Bryan, and he is also running for re-election. So, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So let's hear first a little bit of your background, maybe in a minute or two, your background, and then why you're running and wanting to, take on this kind of challenge again.
No, absolutely. So again, my name's Kevin Boriskie. I was actually born and raised in Bryan. We're actually a fourth generation family here in the community. And I grew up and went to Bryan schools. Once I got out of high school, worked in construction for about 5 years and then decided to go back for college education. I ended up getting a degree from Texas A&M in finance, and actually worked at the City of Bryan Community Development for 3 years after I got out of college, and kind of managed their down payment assistance program and some economic development programs, and then decided to want something a little bit different, kind of got into the building material sales world, and that's kind of where I'm still at 21 years later. And, I've been married to my wife, Amber, for 29 years now. We have 3 children. They all went to Bryan schools. 2 of them graduated Texas A&M already, and our youngest is a senior at Texas A&M. So we've lived and worked and volunteered in this community for quite a while now. One of the reasons that I'm wanting to run again is really, really enjoyed being on council and being able to give back to our community. And I feel Bryan's at a really important point right now. We have a lot of things going on and a lot of projects that we started, and would really love to still be involved and kind of see some of those out to their fruition.
Okay. Very cool. Well, the first question that I asked a lot of other city council members over the last few weeks is related to housing. But with yours, I find it interesting that you actually worked in community development, down payment assistance. I'm
Yes.
curious, that was, what year was that, or years?
It was a couple of years ago. I think it
okay.
was from 97 to 2001.
Yeah. So in your opinion, then coming back on council after all those years ago being a staff member, what has changed in the housing landscape in the city of Bryan, in your opinion, compared to how things were back then?
Yeah. Well, for starters, down payment assistance back then was $5,000 is a program that they have as a deferred forgivable loan if you met the income requirements set by HUD. And that used to go quite a ways. Today that's not the case. I know housing is really skyrocketed since then. And, the whole affordable housing issue, it's not something that just faces, us here at the City of Bryan in our community, but it's almost every city in Texas and almost, nationwide it is.
Right.
Kind of coming out post-COVID, we faced a lot of supply chain challenges, a lot of labor shortages, and just really skyrocketed, the cost of construction, the cost of building materials, and, things are expensive now. So, I think that it is more difficult now, kind of what we could do as from our standpoint on city council. We're somewhat limited as to things that we could do. I mean, obviously we don't have any control over, price of building materials or interest rates and any external factors like that. But I think some of the things that we can do is really work with our local builders and developers to make sure that we have communities out there available to meet buyers' demands in that opening price point. I prefer to say opening price point instead of affordable housing because, affordable means a lot of different things and can
Sure.
be subjective depending on community, but got to make sure we have some of that opening price point. But it's really maintaining a balance too to make sure that not only do we have the opening price point, but that we have a balance and mix of all different price points to meet everyone's demand in the community.
Habitat for Humanity's Faith in Action Pumpkin Patch is open the entire month of October, Sunday through Friday, 12 noon to 8 p.m., and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. The address is 2301 East 29th Street in Bryan. We've got plenty of fall photo opportunities, lots of unique pumpkins, and more, so we hope to see you there.
Yeah, yeah. And so I don't know if you recall this, but what was if you had to deal with incomes back then in 1997, qualified people, what was the average area median income back there? It was probably pretty low, right?
Yeah, they base a lot of that depending on how many. And I want to say back then for family of four was probably in the mid 40s or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was drastically changed.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost doubled. I want to say it's 80 now. But yeah, I was just curious about that and working on staff. Now, when it comes to something that's very much related to housing, and that is public transportation, there's been discussion in both city councils, probably at the county level too, about the transit district and about making sure that the funding is there and, how much that the cities have to pay. What's your take on funding public transportation? Is it something that you think is valuable, or do you have ideas how to do it differently?
Yes, well, that kind of goes hand in hand with growth in our community. I
Sure.
was asked before, what's one of the challenges that we face at the city? And, I'm going to say it's a great thing, but really trying to strategically manage the growth. We're right here in the middle of the Texas Triangle, and having A&M right in our backyard is a huge asset, but with that brings a lot of growth. I know, Texas is a pretty business and friendly environment. A lot of companies are moving here from out of town and out of state, and, that's a wonderful thing to create more jobs. But with that, you start looking at traffic and you need infrastructure, and the need for our public safety definitely grows to maintain that quality of life. And, transit becomes very, very important. I think between the City of Bryan, between Texas Department of Transportation and the Brazos Transit District, we're all challenged to provide, safe and efficient travel, as we're out and about and navigate through our community. And it becomes really, really important. You look at, other cities, and probably not a great example, but New York City has subway system.
Right.
I'm not saying subway system here, but I think, in the future, we are going to have to look at some alternative, methods of transportation. I know a lot of communities rely heavily on the Ubers and Lyft, and they have some mass public transit. So I think it's really just a collaboration between all those entities. And, we have the Brazos Transit District here now that kind of covers Central Texas, East
Right.
Texas, and I think they cover currently about 14,000 square miles. So I think
Wow.
it's just really working together to try and figure this thing out.
Okay. You briefly mentioned about having A&M in our backyard. When it comes to relations between the City of Bryan, City of College Station, Texas A&M, where do you think we're at in that relationship, and where are we going forward when it
Well,
comes?
I think there again. I've been on council 2 years now, but I think the relationship is really, really good, and I'll
Good.
kind of attribute that to some of our past council members and mayors that really started developing those relationships, and we're kind of the benefactor of that. But when you look at everything and the growth going on in our community, it's not just the City of Bryan or the City of College Station. It really takes those relationships and partnerships between the county, the City of College Station, City of Bryan, Texas A&M, the school districts. It's really all working together. And I'd say right now, those relationships are pretty good. With all of the growth and development and new things coming to our community, it's going to take really everybody working hand in hand to make sure that we do it the right way.
If you're running for office or you'd like to meet the candidates, join us on October 19th for our annual and nonpartisan candidates build. We'll put politics aside, roll up our sleeves, and get to work helping a local family build their own home.
One of the final questions I had for you is in your opinion, what is one of the biggest assets Bryan has currently, and what are some of the one or several challenges that you feel like Bryan has that can be dealt with in the next few years?
I think one of the biggest assets that Bryan have is, I'll go back to our staff. I mean, we have a phenomenal staff that works very, very hard, and they get things done. I think staff is definitely a big asset. I think just our strategic location. I mean, College Station 2, Bryan College Station sits in a great spot in between, for the largest MSAs in the country. I think the word's out now. A lot of people are wanting to move here and relocate, which again is great, but it's being able to balance that. So I think those are definitely, big assets that we have. And you talk about affordability. Yes, things are a lot more expensive than they used to be, but when you start looking at some of the other large major MSAs and other communities, Bryan College Station is still, a pretty great value, in all things considered. So I think we're in a very, very fortunate spot.
Okay. And in terms of, can you think of anything that you would like to, should you be reelected, that you would like to work on in the coming years that would make Bryan better?
And first and foremost, I'd say public safety. We're our first responders, our police, our fire, they do a fantastic job. And, I mentioned earlier, with all of this growth, you have to grow our essential services, and public safety is a huge part of that. Because, if people don't feel safe at home and at work and in schools, a lot of this other stuff doesn't even matter. So, I think that's something that we definitely need to make sure that, the city of Bryan's fiscally responsible, so that we can continue to maintain that they have the staff, training, tools to, not only keep our citizens safe, but themselves. The other thing is economic development. Again, we're working with the city on a limited budget, and you could really take all of that budget just between staff, public safety, and, infrastructure and maintenance on streets and roads. So, in order to do some of the things that fall outside of essential services, you have to have the tax base to do that. So that's where these economic development projects or strategic partnership projects come in hand, and that it definitely grows the tax base. It brings in more revenue, so we can not only take care of all the essentials that we have to do, but also be able to work on things to improve the quality of life for our citizens.
Right. And are there any big economic development projects coming up that you can actually discuss at this point? I keep hearing whispers about it, but you still can't, right?
I still can. I think there's been a lot that has been out there on the media and so forth. So those are great avenues to go to, but our city attorney reminds us that we're under non-disclosure agreement for that, so can't talk about that. But we have been very fortunate to get some other ones that have come to this community that will be bringing several hundred jobs that already kind of are public, with like the Certainteed factory that's going in and some of those. So we're sitting in a pretty good spot, and the future's very bright.
That's great. That's great. Well, that's all I had for today. Do you have anything else that you want to bring up before we sign off? And then a question I actually did want from you is, how can people look up more information about you?
Okay.
Your campaign.
Okay, about me and the campaign. So you could go have a website. It's www.boriskieforbryan.com. If you wanted to reach out to me directly, have an email address set up. It's info@boriskieforbryan.com. So those are all ways that you can get in touch with me, or call the city. Since I'm currently on council, you can get in touch with me there as well. One final thing I'd say, it's very, very important to exercise your right to vote. So I would just make sure and encourage everyone. We're within 19 days now of election, just to make sure and tell your friends and family and neighbors and get out and vote, because it does make a difference.
Yeah. Everybody vote.
Everybody
That's
vote.
awesome. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. Again, this is Kevin Boriskie, Place 6 at large for the City of Bryan City Council, and he is running for re-election. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.